Hello and welcome to the Culture Swally, a podcast dedicated to Scottish news and culture. My name is Nicky and I am joined, as always, by the man who always gives me a cold carry when I'm exhausted and late. It's Greg. How are you today, Greg?
I think better than you've been these last few days with your malaise.
I have been so ill this last few days. Like, honestly, so apologies, listener, if my voice sounds a little bit strange. But yeah, I have been really ill. It's not the COVID, don't worry, but I've had a massive head cold. Genuinely, it's wiped me out for a few days. I was in bed for 3 days straight, just sleeping and reading. And it's knocked me out for 6, but I'm on the road to recovery. I feel a lot better. I thought to myself, you know what's going to really cure me is a hot toddy. It's a Scottish remedy. You know, whiskey, honey, lemon. Obviously, it solves all ills. So on Friday, I felt well enough to make my way to the shop because I didn't want to ask my wife, can you nip in and get me a half bottle of whiskey so I can make a hot toddy? I mean, I've got a lovely bottle of 15-year-old Oban in the cupboard, but I'm not going to use that in a hot toddy. For a hot toddy, you need something shite like grouse or bells. Not that I'm saying they're shite if they ever want to sponsor the podcast, but you need a kind of blended whiskey for the purposes of a hot toddy. So I went to the shop and half bottle of grouse, and the girl behind the counter did say to me, oh, well, that's going to be €9, but you can get a 70cl bottle for €12 at the moment because they're on offer. I was fuck it, I'll get that then, why not? It makes sense. Economically, of course it makes sense. So I bought that with the purpose of thinking I'll probably have like maybe 2-3 nips in hot toddies and that'll be it, and then it'll sit in the cupboard until the next time one of us has a cold. In the 2 days I have tanned most of the bottle just through hot toddies, which is quite a remarkable thing to do.
Yeah.
But on the upside, I feel a hell of a lot better now than I did before.
I bet you've been sleeping like a baby with all that whiskey.
I've had beautiful sleeps the last couple of days. In fact, yesterday I woke up and I thought, am I feeling better? But I think it was just a bit of a whiskey hangover initially, because once the time it got to about midday, I felt so much better. And then at 4 o'clock, I was like, right, I'll sit down and watch the Aberdeen game. And normally I would have a beer or a glass of wine or something watching the football. And I thought, well, I've been sick, so I can't have a beer, really. I'll have a hot toddy. And then that progressed into like about 6 hot toddies throughout the evening. Anyway, I'm feeling better. I don't look better. As we've started recording this and I'm looking at myself on Zoom, I am very horrified by how I look, but never mind. So yeah, that's me. How about yourself? How's everything been, Greg?
Good. I mean, I like the idea of a Scottish superhero, and his origin is he catches the cold, and so he starts drinking a lot of hot toddies to the point where he becomes like immune to the common cold virus. And all the honey makes him like hard and healthy as fuck. You know what I mean? And he just runs around solving crimes, not catching the cold, but catching criminals.
So you're talking like kind of Banana Man, but hot toddy man.
Yeah. He doesn't catch the cold, but he catches criminals. Something like that, you know?
Yeah, wonderful. Let's pitch that to Marvel and DC next time we get a chance.
I'll tweet celebrated Scottish comic book writer Mark Miller of Coatbridge and see what he thinks. We can do anything with it. For me, I mean, I'm in good health. I'm sure our listeners will be relieved to know. I've had my sister over visiting me this week with my new nephew. I was meeting him for the first time because he was born on Boxing Day last year, and obviously with the pandemic and whatnot, we've not seen each other for a really long time. So it's been nice having a little baby around. But my kids are obviously, as we've mentioned before, they're older. Like my oldest daughter's 13, my younger daughter will be 11 in a few weeks, and you kind of forget how much hard work babies are, because like a 9-month-old baby needs constant attention. Now I can obviously remember when my daughters were that age, so whenever he was a wee bit fractious, because obviously babies can't tell you what's wrong, you got to sort of eliminate what the cause of their kind of whinging might be or crying might be. So on Tuesday afternoon, we had been down to the beach in the morning before it got too hot. Went for some lunch, came back. It was a wee bit out of sorts, and my sister's a new mother. and my brother-in-law's a new father. And because I have that kind of muscle memory of when my kids are little, I'm like, right, I should try and help out here, so I'm suggesting things and stuff, and he's getting a bit more upset. And then I just thought, wait a minute, he's not my baby. I can just get the fuck out of here. So I went up to my bedroom, I closed the door, I lay in the bed, I read my book, and had a lovely little nap. I came down the stairs again about 2 hours later. Everything was sorted, baby was sleeping. And one of my friends who had came over with his son's only 2, and he had met my nephew, he said, do you not miss like when the girls were that age? And I was like, I sort of miss like the kind of 2 and 3-year-old Macy and Renee, but I don't miss all the baby admin or the life admin. It's just, you know, I mean, yeah, it doesn't last forever, but it's good when it's fin they can start like brushing their own teeth and wiping their own arse and telling you what the problem is rather than you having to fucking deduce it by the process of elimination. But no, it was nice having them here. It was their first time in Dubai, and the weather's getting to that good spot now, so yeah, it was good. Nice little week.
Fantastic. Well, I guess that's illnesses and baby trauma out the way for the week.
The other thing that, just before we go on to the news, the other thing that I found out this week, I know that you're a fan of Pearl Jam. The song Jeremy, I found out this week that I have been singing the entirely wrong words to the chorus for 30 years.
Now, why? What did you think you'd been singing?
So I thought it was Jeremy spoke and saved the day. Jeremy spoke and saved the day. Because, like, in my defence, Eddie Vedder's not the most... what's the word? Sort of, he's... I don't know. Anyway, go on.
He doesn't enunciate very well. Is it not Jeremy spoke in class today?
That is the correct words to the chorus. And the only reason I found out is because... if you play your Apple Music on Apple TV, some of the songs bring up the lyrics on the screen. And I was most surprised to find out I've been getting that wrong all this time.
Or you just listen to the song and it's quite easy. Jeremy spoke in class today.
It is once you've kind of seen it, but I always thought Jeremy spoken, save the day. He sort of sings in the club style, like Vic Reeves used to do on Shooting Stars.
How does he save the day, though?
I don't know. I mean, the whole song's a bit weird.
He doesn't save the day.
Yeah, well,
he spoke in class today. He didn't save the day at all.
Yeah, I don't know. Every day's a school day, right?
Right, whatever. Right, let's move on to the news.
Cue the jingle.
Hello, this is the Outer Hebrides Broadcasting Corporation, and here is what's been going on in the news.
Okay, Greg. Now, we have not, despite our pleas to the audience, we have not had any emails about the question we put out a couple of episodes ago about how people submitted pornographic photos of their wives to magazines in the 80s. So I have taken it upon myself to do some research into this topic, and I have found some information here. So I have found a copy of Reader's Wives from the mid-80s. And this particular copy has a woman called Lane from Cardiff. And it does say at the bottom, so get them out and get flashing. Your cameras, that is. Send colour prints, Polaroids or transparencies to Department KW, Galaxy Publications, PO Box 369, Malden, Essex, CM9 3TY. That's for anyone that's still interested in sending prints, Polaroids or transparencies to this address. And they will give you £20 for each picture. And it does say, to be fair, if they are to OTT, they will send the pictures back. So I don't know what that means to OTT.
So a transparency then, I'm assuming, is a negative, right?
Yeah, I presume so. So you could send either a photo, a Polaroid, or a negative into Fiesta, Reader's Wives, whatever, and they would sort it
So
out.
you would have to go if you didn't have a Polaroid camera. And now my grandfather had a Polaroid camera, and as I recall, like those old Polaroid cameras, they didn't produce a very good photograph. They were often a wee bit blurry or whatever. So if you wanted like a good quality print, you would have to like take your film down to Boots or Super Snaps or Jessop's or somewhere. And I think now I did a photography module at college, at Aberdeen College, as part of my HND, and you know, when this was back in the 90s, before, like, kind of pre-digital, so you looked at every photo you developed as you developed it. Because every photo, you know, you have to sort of wash out the film and then, you know, project it onto the paper and stuff. So somebody in your local, like, Photoshop is going to see either your wife, or unless you're in the something for the ladies page, or see you. So someone's got to go and collect those photographs, which would be mortifying. But then I suppose if you're prepared to put yourself in a widely selling pornographic magazine, you're maybe not bothered if, like, Doris down at Jessup sees your naked wife and your naked body in photograph.
Well, that was the whole thing that led to the discussion that we were saying. Did you go down to Boots and get them developed, or your local Snappy Snaps, or did you develop them at home? Right, Greg, so what have you seen in Scotland this week that has interested you and has caught your attention? I mean, this week has been quite dire in terms of there's been a raise of spikings, and tonics have been blacklisted by LGBT community as well. So let's have a look at some fun stuff. What have you seen in the news that's caught your eye?
Well, these two young Aberdonians definitely having fun. This comes from the Daily Record. The headline is, Numpty youths pictured hitching lift back of moving bus, busy Scots city centre. Angry locals and first bus have hit out at the kids after they clung on to the vehicle as it was turning in Aberdeen city centre. I can exclusively, well, not exclusively reveal because it's in a Daily Record, but the corner in question is they're turning from George Street onto St Andrews Street, just in front of the former John Lewis building. The bus, if anyone's interested, was the 19C service. The incident happened during busy rush hour at 6 o'clock on Friday, this Friday just gone. A resident took, this is the bit that made me laugh. I mean, obviously, it made me laugh that these kids had the audacity to jump in the back of a bus, a double-decker bus. But this is what made me laugh. A resident took to local Facebook page Fubar News to raise the alarm. I'm not sure, if you want to raise the alarm, I'm not sure Facebook is a place to do it. In a post, they posted the picture with the caption, 10 minutes ago in town. Feel sorry for bus drivers and responsibility they carry cause of silly teenagers. Now, to be fair to the bus driver, if two dafties jump in the back of his bus and they're hanging off the back and he can't see them and something happens to them, pretty sure that's not his responsibility.
No. Of course not.
As you can imagine, the post generated a lot of engagement with over 1,500 reactions and nearly 1,000 comments. Many locals were quick to criticise the youths, but others were more understanding, insisting no harm was done. In the comments, one woman said, absolutely crazy, feel sorry for the drivers. So basically, these kids are doing a bit of a Bob Hoskins in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You know how he jumps in the back of the trolley car with the kids rather than paying for a ticket. Bob's grizzled investigator, whose name Mike Valiant, Eddie Valiant. That's his name, isn't it? Roger Rabbit.
See, my go-to was Marty McFly in Back to the Future. On the skateboard, but I guess he has a skateboard, whereas these kids didn't. They're just hitching a ride on the back of the...
They look like they're standing on the tow bar.
Well, no harm done, really. I mean, did anyone die?
No, not so far.
Was anyone injured? No.
I wonder where they jumped on though, because did they jump on at the top of George Street and just get a huddle down? Because that bus would have to have had stopped at a couple of sets of traffic lights on its way down George before it got to the St Andrews Street corner. I'm just curious. They probably jumped on at the traffic lights for a laugh. I don't think they were catching a lift or trying to dodge the fare. Do you know what I mean? You ever jumped in the back of a bus?
No, I can honestly say I've never jumped on the back of a bus. What about yourself? Have you ever given that a go? I don't think I've jumped in the back of any moving vehicle. I have ridden in the boot of a car. a couple of times.
Yeah, I've done that.
Which I thought was funny. Like, I was maybe a bit pissed and there was too many of us to fit in the car, and I'm like, I'll get in the boot. And it's not until the next day you're thinking, if someone had smashed into the back of that car by accident, then I'd probably be a goner. But at the time, it was funny. And it's probably more comfortable than squeezing in the back with 4 people. So it was all right.
I mean, I've done that a couple of... I mean, something that I've done a couple of times is I've jumped in the back of a works van. You know, if there's been... Because works vans obviously only have a couple of seats. So I've volunteered a couple of times to do that. But because, like, there's no windows and you can't see out, every time I've done it, I find myself feeling a bit sick because I can't see where I'm going. There's obviously no seat belt, you know, lying on top of a toolbox or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I remember the first time that I saw Back to the Future, because Marty McFly does make it look very easy, doesn't he? The way he just kind of hitches a wee toe in the back of the pickup truck and whatnot. I mean, the first time I saw that, I think it was probably the coolest thing I'd ever seen anybody do on a film. And I did sometimes think about trying it, but I remember my dad kind of warning me against it after the movie when I was saying, it's I guess something like, how cool was it when he was hanging in the back of the truck on his skateboard, and my dad saying, there's no way he could do that. These cars go too fast. He'd have fallen off and hurt himself. Knowing how I functioned in those days, I probably thought, right, well, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, probably for the best.
Yep. Anyway, that's my first story this week. What have you found in the news?
Well, I also have a bus story for us this week, and I have a story from the Daily Record this week, and it's a Motherwell bus driver who ploughed into a low bridge in Wishaw forgot he was at the wheel of a double-decker bus. Keith Rives was fined £490, that's a very strange amount, after admitting to driving carelessly in the town on the 17th of August last year. The 60-year-old told the court, "I thought I was driving a single-decker. Unfortunately, it was a double-decker. It was a momentary lapse in concentration. I didn't normally drive double-deckers." He'd been furloughed due to the coronavirus situation. When he went back to work, single-deckers had been replaced by double-deckers due to passenger capacity. Unfortunately for Keith, he'd forgotten he was driving a double-decker. There was one passenger hurt in the collision, but luckily nobody was sitting upstairs. The sheriff put 8 penalty points on his licence, but cleared him of any more serious charges of dangerous driving. So the double-decker bus hit a railway bridge. It was driving from Glasgow to Overton, and one female passenger suffered a bloody nose. Right. Giving evidence at court, the defendant admitted that there was a clear height restriction notice on the bridge, but it said that a single-decker bus would pass safely under it. And of course, he thought he was driving a single-decker bus. Now, there's a photo of this, and the top of the bus has come clean off as he's driven under it. So it must have been going quite a pelt to come off. You know, is there not? There's a film that you see like a double-decker bus going under a low bridge and like the top comes clean off. I can't think. It's maybe happened in a few films. Is it a Bourne film maybe or something?
Bond film, maybe. Yeah. Is that what you said?
Maybe, but it looks pretty much like that. The prosecutor said it's unacceptable to simply forget the size of your bus, thereby putting passengers in danger. But the sheriff said he wasn't satisfied that the driving fell into the dangerous category. So he has been suspended, unfortunately, after the crash. And he did say the collision was a bad experience, but hopefully it doesn't limit him resuming his driving career. So yeah, if you ever misjudged a bridge or anything, or gone under I mean, it does happen sometimes. I've been maybe in a bus and it's going under a low bridge and you're thinking, oh Jesus, is it going to fit? But of course it does, because the bus driver knows that he's
that bridge
driving a double-decker bus. I mean, come on, he forgot he was driving a double-decker. Like, how do you forget? Pretty sure you would realise that you're driving a big bus.
If I can be devil's advocate for a second and give me the benefit of the doubt, why did it take him so long to realise after the top deck of the bus connected with the bridge? You would think as soon as you heard that first sickening crunch, you'd be like, oh fuck, keep going and then realise once the top of the bus was almost sheared off.
That is a very valid point, actually. Yeah. Do you remember the absolute pandemonium in Aberdeen when the Bendy bus debuted?
I do. It was quite exciting. My first,
it was, and you were excited.
Yeah, my first trip in a bendy bus.
You wanted to get on the Bendy bus, and the Bendy bus was exciting. For anyone that's unaware, the Bendy bus was a big thing in Aberdeen, and it was effectively 2 single-decker buses kind of melded together with this kind of concertina thing in the middle.
Yeah.
So it was like a massive long bus. It was 2 buses held together with this kind of concertina.
With a bit of washing machine pipe or something like that.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But yeah, it was amazing. I think I was only on it once, and that was on the way back from a Radiohead concert at the exhibition centre.
Yeah. No, I was on it a couple of times, especially if I was coming in, when I was at the Gordon Centre in my first year of college, I would often get the bus from Bridge of Dawn into the city centre. So I was on it a few times. I mean, yeah, the old bendy bus. I wonder why it never caught on. I think the streets in Aberdeen, because obviously the city centre streets of Aberdeen are hundreds of years old and not designed for like 25 metre long conveyances with like a hinge in the middle. You know, maybe that's why.
Yeah, thinking about a lot of the streets of where I lived in the surrounding areas, the bendy bus just wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
In a lot of it, like the terminus, as they were called, kind of the way the bus would circulate, it wouldn't fit. So I don't think it didn't work in terms of most of Aberdeen, which is probably why it was just on that Bridge of Dawn to city centre route.
Now, the corner that our 2 bus riders were photographed on, there's a bus stop, because if you remember, I used to go out with a girl who lived right next to that bus stop in St Andrews Street. So the bendy bus, if it was coming round that corner and it had to stop at the bus stop, there's a good chance that the back half of the bus would still be on George Street or at a kind of angle blocking the traffic coming up St Andrews Street from the other side. So maybe that's why that's why the bendy bus never took off in Aberdeen. I feel like I've seen it in other cities as well. I'm sure they had bendy buses in Glasgow too. But to your point,
probably.
To your point, I thought it's been a long time since I've seen. So
yeah,
well,
I don't know. Well, it's been a long time since I've been in Aberdeen, like in terms of being on a bus. But yeah, I don't remember. But I just remember the absolute pandemonium of when this bendy bus came out. It was just like it was the greatest thing in the world ever that had happened to Aberdeen. We had a bus that had a bend in it.
Everybody was just getting over the shock of designated bus lanes in the city centre that you could ride your bike in. And then this bendy bus comes along and just blows everyone's minds.
I don't even know if bus lanes were a thing when the bendy bus came in. It was just like, I don't know, it was like New Coke. It was just the bendy buses here.
I remember outrage in Aberdeen when the bus lanes were introduced. I mean, the thing is, and now I don't want to speak ill of anybody from Aberdeen because I lived there for a long time and I really liked living there, and I know a lot of good friends, including your good self. The people of Aberdeen do have a bit of a habit of rallying against any proposed changes. You know, like I remember.
Well, we don't like change.
They don't like change. I remember when there was talks to pull down St Nicholas House on Broad Street next to the Bonaccord Centre. Well, next to the Illicit Still pub, and or near it, and everybody in Aberdeen agreed that the building was hideous, but what they didn't want was another modern building going in its place. Like, well, what else could you have if you're going to have a building there? Something's got to be built, unless you're going to go back in time and transport an old building brick by brick into the 21st century to build it on Broad Street. You're going to have a modern building. You know, they're a funny bunch, so they are.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to disagree with you there. You're saying that Aberdeen people don't like change and they're stuck in the past as I sit recording this podcast in my 1983 Aberdeen home strip. So, anyway, what else have you seen in the news this week, Greg?
Well, I feel like this next story may spark outrage amongst fans of social justice. It's kind of along the lines of maybe a wee bit along the lines of the the JJT, the JJE from the last episode of the podcast. It comes from the Falkirk Herald on Wednesday, the 20th of October, 2021. The headline reads, Karen, which is an area near Falkirk, Karen welder broke man's jaw after being threatened with knife. A welder was fined more than £2,300 after breaking the jaw of a man who pulled a knife on him. I can already sense a bit of outrage, particularly amongst our North American listeners. Neil O'Brien, 24, had gone to meet the knife man over trouble he had been causing a friend, Falkirk Sheriff Court was told last Tuesday. The court heard that an argument had ensued over the phone between O'Brien and the man, one Gavin Christie, over a suspicion that Mr. Christie had been bombarding his ex-partner, who happens to be a friend of Mr. O'Brien's, with calls from a withheld number. The prosecutor, Cheryl Clark, said, Mr. Christie told the accused he wasn't scared, and much like Tom Petty, he wouldn't back down. She didn't say Tom Petty, I just added that little flourish in there.
Okay.
O'Brien suggested that they should meet at the Karen Co-op to discuss things further. I'm not sure that a convenience store is the right place to hold peace talks. O'Brien then turned up with a third man at the Co-op and he chatted with Mr. Christie for a few minutes. Miss Clark said it was agreed that nobody wanted any trouble, but the situation then escalated. Mr. Christie pulled out a kitchen knife he had brought with him and told O'Brien and the third man to stay away from him. Miss Clark said he was told not to be so stupid with the knife, resulting in him apparently throwing the knife away behind a bush. O'Brien then said, you think you're a hard man bringing a knife, and there was a physical altercation resulting in Mr. Christie being punched. And he was then assaulted by O'Brien. O'Brien was arrested and told police that he had retaliated by punching Mr. Christie, claiming that Mr. Christie had gone for him. After being cautioned and charged, he said, I think it was only self-defence, not an assault, considering he had a knife. Mr. Christie suffered several fractures to his jaw, which had to be surgically repaired with 3 separate metal plates. O'Brien, of Karen, pleaded guilty to assaulting Mr. Christie under provocation and to his severe injury. The incident occurred in the early hours of December the 13th, 2020, near the Co-op at Karen Retail Park. Solicitor Simon Hutchinson, defending, said that despite his young years, O'Brien had a good job, earning £40,000 a year, owned his own house, and could pay a fine. So Sheriff Derek Hamilton fined the first offender £2,325. He said, I take into account the circumstance you found yourself in, but clearly this was still a serious assault, so I sense your outrage coming over the interwebs.
Oh, wow. Well, that is quite a tale. I mean, why is the kitchen knife the kind of go-to weapon? Is it because it's just what you have handy?
It's convenient, isn't it? Usually you got a bread knife or a vegetable peeler hanging about the house. Stick it down the front of your tracksuit bottoms.
I guess it's the weapon of choice for Michael Myers, so why shouldn't it be the weapon of choice for Fatboy Slim or for
Fatboy Slim?
Any other kind of weapon of choice?
Oh yes,
is that Fatboy Slim, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, kitchen knife. Yeah, it does seem a bit of a strange kind of tale that you've just told us there. Bit of an odd kind of altercation going on.
I'm not a fan of violence, but that said, I've got a lot of time for people. I like it when somebody is being threatened by somebody else, and the person doing the threatening probably thinks that the person they're threatening is, a pushover or whatever. Maybe they're trying to mug him or something. And then it turns out that the person they're threatening is in fact hard as a coffin nail and retaliates with extreme prejudice, shall we say.
Yeah, you love to see that. You do see those clips, obviously, on the social media in terms of, like, people bullying a kid, and then it turns out the kid's like a black belt in Kung Fu and just absolutely nails the guy that's bullying him. And that's the kind of thing you absolutely love to see. And yeah, I guess this story is the same. It is the case that you do want to see people fighting back, and kind of it's very funny, and yeah, it kind of makes it all the more lighter when you hear about something like this.
I did hear a funny story along the same lines today about an ex-Welsh, not professional rugby player, but like a Welsh rugby player who someone tried to mug him when he was taking money out of a cash machine, and he turned and he pulled the guy's t-shirt over his head, like ice hockey player style, gave him a couple of digs, Gave him a few digs, so he fell over. And all the guy's change fell out his pockets, fell into the road. So the guy was getting up, and he's obviously a bit distraught and all that. And the X-ray players, the adrenaline's calming down, and he's like, "Look, are you all right?" And the guy said, "Oh, I've lost my bus fare. Like all my coins fell out my pocket, and they've gone down like the drain and things." He's like, "Oh," he said, "How much is your bus fare?" And he's like, "Oh, like $1.20." So the rugby player ended up giving him £2 to get the bus home.
Oh, what a happy ending then. Oh, that's nice. I like to hear that. Oh, very good.
Anyway, what's your next story?
Well, this fits in quite well with our topic that we're going to be discussing later on in the podcast. So this is from the Daily Record this week, and it's from Ayr. A young team, and young team is in inverted commas, obviously meaning a young gang, have been spotted riding a stolen JCB steamroller through Ayr, with police launching a probe into the incident. I don't know if you saw the clip. This did go quite viral on social media, and it's this basically young guys just riding a steamroller through this fucking Ayrshire estate, chanting loudly. So the footage online shows a gang of youths chanting loudly and driving the JCB steamroller through Wallace town in Ayr at 10:30 p.m. on Wednesday, October the 13th. In the clip, the youngsters can be seen sat and standing on top of the machinery as they roll through the housing estate. The group was driving along Whitlets Road, and a report was made to the police. The roller was last traced on Russell Drive, and an investigation has been launched by officers. Police now say that the roller has been returned to the owner, so we're very glad to hear that the roller is back where it should be. So yeah, basically a young team stole a JCB steamroller, drove it through their housing estate, and as I say, I'll see if I can get this clip and put it up on our Instagram. They're literally driving it through an estate, chanting football songs as they're driving it through, and there's people looking out their windows cheering at them, and then they've just ditched it. But yeah, brilliant. I mean, have you never stolen a steamroller?
No,
have you?
No, I've never done that. I've never stolen any sort of motorised conveyance.
A fair play to them. I don't know how they got it started. I mean, I can only imagine the keys were left in it, or I don't know. Keys for a steamroller, so. Or is it just a button press? You couldn't hotwire a steamroller, so I'd imagine.
I'm pretty sure those boys couldn't hotwire a steamroller. No, I mean it's a combustion engine. It's going to need an ignition. So yeah, there'll be keys in it for sure.
Yeah. So it's more the fault of the person that's left the keys in or beside the steamroller rather than the guys. Come on.
Is it though?
Come on. I guarantee you, if I was like 13, 14 years old and walking, as you did at the time, you would walk around town kind of, or like round the neighbourhood on a Friday, Saturday evening, just kind of looking for something to do. You would end up at the park. You were just hanging out. You weren't doing any trouble. But if you walk past a steamroller and you saw the keys were in it, you're going to be thinking, let's start it up. Let's have a go. Okay. We'll just drive down to the end of the street. And then once you've done that, you're like, oh, fuck it. Let's go through the house and estate. Come on. Are you telling me you wouldn't?
I mean, I've never been in this situation. It's like temptation has never been put in front of me as a youth. I'm just imagining the young Nicky and his cohorts. Oh, look, guys left the keys in that steamroller. Mum will have a go. So you're chugging along in it, stopped by a police officer. What the fuck do you boys think you're doing? Yeah, but the keys were left in it. Aye, alright, fair enough, boys. Just take it back, eh? No harm done.
I'm not saying that, but I genuinely think if I'd been 13, 14 and I was out with my friends and we'd seen keys left in a steamroller, I think we would have started it up and taken it for a drive.
Well, let's have it right. When you and I were in our early 20s, if we were walking like up George Street or something on the way to the pie shop and we came across a steamroller with the keys in it, we'd be driving the steamroller up to the pie shop and then maybe all the way home.
Yeah, I can actually guarantee that would have happened, yes. You're right. Forget 13, 14, early 20s. Fuck's sake, we're in our early 40s. We'll probably still do the same.
Yeah.
if we were back in Aberdeen next year and we're pissed walking home and we saw a steamroller with the keys in the ignition, and let's face it, probably be the two of us and maybe our mutual friend. In fact, probably be the two of us. Our mutual friend would have probably gone home early. I think even now, as early 40s gentlemen, if we were walking home pissed, let's say we were staying where we stayed last time we were back in Aberdeen, right? That flat at the end of Holborn Street. If we got to like the top end of Holborn Street and we saw a steamroller and we've got our chips and pie supper and stuff and iron brew, and then if there was a steamroller sitting there and the keys were in it, would we not be like, oh, fuck it, let's just take this home?
I mean, I got so sick of making that journey from like the corner of Union Street and Holborn Street down to that flat. It would not have taken much encouragement, I don't think, to do it. I mean that's the issue. You know, like you mentioned, we are gentlemen in their early 40s. Hopefully we're quite mature, we've made the right choices. But the problem is, all it takes is getting together in person and a few beers, not necessarily that many beers, and we just regress back to the early 20s dafties in every conceivable way, almost. Good times.
Good times. Right, we're going to be looking out for a steamroller next time we're in Aberdeen. Have you got anything else that you've seen this week?
No, I've exhausted all my news for this week.
No. Okay. The only other thing that I had was, have you seen that Still Game has had a massive uptake in Netflix in the last week?
I haven't. No, I didn't see this story.
Yeah, because people are searching for Squid Game and they are getting Still Game. And people have been watching Still Game thinking that it's Squid Game. Right. Squid Game, if you're listening to this, I still haven't watched it yet, but my wife has. Yeah, people have been searching for Squid Game and have been, unfortunately, coming up with Bobby the Barman and Naveed instead. So there you go. Still Game has had a massive uptake in viewership in the last couple of weeks. Right, well, I guess that concludes the news for this week. Let's have a little word from our sponsors.
I'd like to tell you about Bank of Scotland's Super Saver accounts. For under sevens, there's a money box kit, a Super Squirrel poster, a badge. For over sevens, there's a management folder with a membership card, notepad and pen, a colour magazine and a deposit account book. To make savings grow, we've a super high interest rate, and there's lots of new friends to meet at Bank of Scotland, a friend for life.
Okay, so it was your choice this week, Greg. So why don't you tell us what we're going to be talking about on the Swally this week?
Okie doke. Well, I found 3 introductions to today's movie. I chose a movie this week. So the first one is quite vague. It's IMDb's introduction to this film, and it says, encompassed by violent street gangs, neglectful parents, bullying teachers, and a dearth. You don't hear a lot of dearth these days, a dearth of positive role models. A studious but emotionally abandoned kid turns thug. Wikipedia says the movie is Neds. Can I give it away? How can I have to give it away now? Neds, also known as Non-Educated Delinquents, stylized as Neds, is a 2010 coming-of-age drama film directed and written by Peter Mullan, set in Scotland. The film centres on John McGill, played by Conor McCarron, a teenager growing up in 1970s Glasgow. John's story follows his involvement with the city's youth culture, his impact on his development as a teenager, and the back of the DVD box says, from acclaimed director Peter Mullan comes Neds, the story of a young man's journey from prize-winning schoolboy to knife-carrying teenager. John McGill, an amazing performance from newcomer Conor McCarron, struggles with the low expectations of those around him, and events take a maddening turn as he descends into shock and violence on a seemingly one-man mission of self-destruction. So I think, obviously, the back of the DVD box has been written by a skilled marketing person, whereas the Wikipedia entry and the IMDb entry is probably written by somebody like me. So this week's movie is Neds, our second movie by Peter Mullan, after we did Orphans way back last year. The episode's still available. This isn't the first time you've seen Neds, is it?
No, I was very aware of this film when it first came out. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I was living in the Middle East when this film would have come out. But I was aware of it because I listened every week to the Mark Commode and Simon Mayo BBC podcast where they would review films, and they had Peter Mullan on one week to discuss Neds, and they reviewed it the following week. So I was aware of the film. Unsurprisingly, it didn't come out in the cinemas in Dubai, so I had to wait for it to come out on DVD, which meant I could download it from, well, let's be honest, streaming services weren't available at that time, so I did download it from the Bay of Pirates. And yeah, I watched it when it first came out, and I remember really enjoying the film, but I don't think it left a huge mark on me, and it was the only time I'd watched it up until this week when I rewatched it for the podcast. And I have to say, watching it again the second time, it made a much bigger mark on me this time. And yeah, I was genuinely blown away by this film, of the impact that it kind of had on me, and the depth and how good a film this really is. And it shouldn't come as a surprise because it's a Peter Mullan film. I mean, he's only directed, three films, really? And there's only two we can review on the Swally, because technically the other one is The Magdalene Sisters, which is an Irish film. So I don't think we can allow that. But yeah, this film is incredible. So I really enjoyed it. But what about yourself? What's your first kind of memories of Neds? I think you were quite early on board with this, weren't you?
My anticipation for this film when it was coming out was high. Unfortunately, when it came out, I had my daughter was only one and a bit, and my wife was pregnant with her second daughter, so opportunities to go to the cinema just weren't there, really. I had to wait until it came out on DVD. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it a few times. Normally, when we do something for the Swally, I'll try my hardest to watch it twice. But with this one, I only kind of had to watch it once. And it didn't feel like it's been that long since the last time I watched it, although I couldn't tell you exactly when that was. But, every time I've seen it, I've really enjoyed it. I think Peter Mullan's very good at getting very natural performances out of, kind of young actors or amateur actors. If I think about Orphans, like the girl who plays Rosemary and stuff, and the little kids that are in Orphans, like the wee girl that takes Rosemary in when she gets lost. And, I watched an interview with him about this film, and he was being asked, because all the young guys and girls in the movie they were certainly kind of unknowns when the movie came out. Unfortunately, none of them really have sort of set the world of theatre or cinema alight. The adult cast, you've got Stephen McCall in there, you've got Peter Mullan in there as well. You've got what's the actor's name who plays Malky in the scene at the club? I can't remember his name, but he's in My Name Is Joe and loads of Scottish thing. So they're all quite accomplished actors, but he was talking about how he got the performance out of these guys and girls. And he's like, he said, when you're directing kids, like young people like these, their tendency is to want to act. And really, I don't want them to try and act. I want them to sort of feel it. And however he sort of manages his cast and his set and everything. I mean, the young guy, Conor McCarron, who plays the older John, like it's a bit like Red Road. He's in like every scene. He's in apart from the very beginning when another actor, like a young actor's playing him as a young boy. He's in every scene. He doesn't really say an awful lot in the course of the film. There's not a lot of dialogue from him. Really, like, when he's around the other members of the gang and stuff, and when he's in the classroom, I mean, I think the only scene where he has quite a lot of lines is it's a sort of turning point for the movie when he's at odds with the Latin teacher. But the rest of the film, a lot of it is him reacting to what's going on, and he's very good he's a very good physical actor, at sort of conveying how the character's feeling and that sort of thing. And Peter Mullan just gets an absolutely superb performance out of him. Considering he'd never really acted before. I think out in his IMDb, I think he had like a short on his resume before he did Neds. But it's astonishing.
Yeah, I watched an interview with Peter Mullan, and the actor actor Conor McCarron, who plays John. And it was literally, Peter Mullan put an advert in the newspaper in Glasgow looking for, I think it said, like, kids to be 16 and over, boys and girls, just come along to this kind of workshop for a film that we're producing. And it was Conor's dad's friend who saw the advert in the paper, gave the paper to his dad, who then gave it to Conor, and he went along to this workshop. And in the interview I saw, I think he went to like 7 different auditions or kind of meetings with Peter Mullan. And as Peter Mullan said, they were kind of like umming and ahhing about him because they weren't sure. And they realised that they couldn't have the same actor playing John from the young years through to the kind of early teenage years that you see him in the film. So they realised they would have to cast 2 different actors as young John and slightly older John. And when they stumbled upon the actor to play the younger John, they realised the similarity that he had to Conor. And effectively, I think that's why kind of Conor got the part. But he did say that there was a lot of workshopping, but the workshopping was always fun and there was no stress. It was kind of just easy, just playing. And I think Peter Mullan seems like a really great kind of director in terms of he's just like, just do what you want to do, just kind of, it's meant to be natural. Yeah. And it's almost like a Ken Lynch type thing, as we've seen from Sweet 16 and The Angels Share. It's casting natural actors in their natural environment and just letting them get on with it. And that's what Peter Mullan has done in this film. As you say, the majority of the actors in this film, this is their only role. Yeah. And he has cast proper Scottish schemies and just let them just do what they do. Yeah. And do you know what I mean? Hopefully I haven't offended anyone by saying schemies, but he's just let them kind of get on with it. And it works so well. It just feels so natural. And genuinely, it does feel like you're watching a Ken Loach film in terms of the performances you're getting from them. Yeah, the guy that plays John, Conor McCarron, he does it so well. But in that interview, he did say, I love the scenes when there's just silence, because silence is so much more kind of imposing and gets the message across. And as you say, he doesn't say a huge amount in the film, really. Yeah,
I mean, go back to what you were saying about the similarities with Ken Loach's work. You know, I saw an interview with Peter Mullan too, and he was saying how, you know, the film is set, although it's not really established in the narrative film. He says the film is set in 1973, so, you know, he didn't want to like play to give smart arse homages to stuff in the 70s, but he said, you know, when he was thinking about the style of the film, he was thinking about all the sort of cinematic things that were in the forefront when he was a kid and in that time. So like the scenes where you see the gang kind of walking toward the camera are sort of reminiscent to like A Clockwork Orange, for example. The scene, you know, there's a scene where when John, you know, after the fight in the school toilets and the knife slides under the cubicle door where John's sort of taken cover, if you like, and then you see him back in his bedroom with the knife, and it's like a little very sly sort of nod to Taxi Driver. You know, he's looking at himself in the mirror with the knife down in front of his trousers and stuff, you know.
It's exactly what I thought when I saw that scene. I was like, that's Travis Bickle. Yeah. That is exactly what he's doing. Yeah, it completely. That comes across so well.
But he's also, Mullan, he's also trying to evoke a little bit of the style of things like A Play for Today. We've done a couple of plays for today on the Swally. We've done Down Among the Big Boys and Just a Boys Game. And the sort of, that kind of gritty social realism, Ken Loach directed quite a lot of plays for today. I think his most famous one was Cathy Come Home. And so, you know, he, like Mullan says himself, you know, I'm not going to try to be smart about it, but the movie, the story originally, he was thinking of it being a sort of almost autobiographical story about himself. You know, he sort of maybe not famously, but he's been quite candid about the fact that his own father was quite an abusive drunk that Mullan attacked when he was old enough, that he was a member of a gang. But what he said was, he says, I found when I was writing the script, as soon as I dropped the kind of blatant, straight autobiographical elements, and I just kind of focused on the sort of of things that I felt at that time. You know, I said I felt kind of hard done by, I felt kind of prejudiced against because of my social situation, etc. So then that's when the drama started to come, and you know, the sort of characters started to come to life on the page at least. It's quite an interesting approach, and he said quite an interesting thing, because he said, you know, when it comes to autobiographies, you kind of, you know, when you set out, you sort of assume that people will find things that happen to you interesting. He said, but the majority of people might not find it interesting at all. You know, just because something happened to you doesn't necessarily mean that people want to hear about it. He said, you know, just kind of focusing on the feelings and you know, a lot of the situations in Neds are close to situations that Mullan found himself in the early 70s as a young man.
And I think that's the kind of the genius part of this film, in terms of you have such a young cast and a lot of them are unknowns, and they have the serious kind of weight of the shoulders in the film. Apart from Wee T, he is kind of the comedic aspect, and he does kind of remind me of to speak about kind of Sweet 16 and Angel Share again. He kind of reminds me of like Sidekick or Arthur. You know, he's kind of the comic relief. Apart from him, the young actors have a very serious part to play, but it's mostly the adult actors that have the kind of comedy element, apart from Peter Mullan's character as the father. But you have Stephen McCall as one of the teachers, and he is hilarious. And then, of course, not just Stephen McCall, but then you have David Mackay as the kind of camp leader, as another comedic aspect. And then, of course, you have Gary Lewis as Mr. Russell. And again, another very funny kind of comedic role. It's almost like you have those three adult actors taking the comedy aspect in this very serious film. And all the youngsters are having to do the very kind of hard graft of the really deep kind of meaningful role, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when the comedy comes in this movie, it's because like the very beginning of the film, you have young John receiving the class prize, his sister's there from America, getting a photograph with the headmaster and everything, and then John's just like ambushed sort of surreptitiously by this kid who comes into it again later, sort of threatening him. So you sort of realise quite quickly what kind of film this is going to be, and you know, the drama. A lot of the drama is incredibly heavy. But so when those light moments come, you know, I think they're made all the more attractive by the fact that they're a welcome break from, you know, what's happening in John's life and the kind of journey that he finds himself on. You know, I saw Peter Mullan talking about Stephen McCall, and they've obviously worked before together. And he said, you know, I wanted Stephen to, he said, you know, Stephen came in with an idea of how he was going to play this teacher. He said, but I asked them just to kind of focus on the sort of business of being a teacher. So in the first time we see McCall's character, he's doing the class register, you know. He said, so that activity of reading the register sort of anchors the performance. And then, I'm sure Steve McCall's recalling his own sort of school days, because a lot of teachers, but I can remember teachers at school when I was really young being a bit like that, you know, just like serious and everybody, you know, sort of quick to anger, if you like, you know what I mean? You kind of knew, you sort of knew the teachers you could maybe be a wee bit sort of cheeky or a bit loose with, and you knew the teachers that you just don't fuck about in their class. And like to your point, it's a great, you know, he's not in the movie very long, Stephen McCall. I think he's only got about 5 or 10 minutes maximum. But, and again, it just speaks to what a good actor he is. You almost you can sort of see that teacher's life. You know, he's teaching the sort of, not the top class, but the second from top class. You know, he's got kids that want out of his class into the top class. He's got, when we see the scene when the two boys from 3A are coming down into his class, and they look like they're about to walk the fucking plank, those two boys. And he's like, you know, why is it? He says something like, why does nobody want to be in this class? I'm just as good a teacher as anybody in this school.
Take your seats. And stop your crying. Why is it that whenever a boy is sent to this class, he seems to think he's on the beginning of a never-ending downward spiral to failure? Now I'm starting to take this personally. I am just as bloody good as any other teacher in this or any other bloody school. You know, you boys don't know you're born. You could have had, like me, an education with the nuns. Now that's
the very first time we see him, he's giving a wee boy the belt, actually, before he does the register, because I don't think we ever find out. I can't remember why the wee boy's getting the belt when John comes through after going into the wrong class. So
I think, as you say, he's in about like 3 scenes, I think, Stephen McCall. And for me, it kind of almost reminds me of Mark Wahlberg in The Departed.
Yeah.
In terms of, it's a short kind of part, but he steals the film.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so memorable, but it just leaves this impact in you. And that's exactly what I kind of thought watching this.
I mean, Mullan, he obviously selected the adult cast based on people he'd worked with before. Steve McCall's in Orphans with him. Gary Lewis is in Orphans. He's also in My Name is Joe. Dave Mackay is in My Name is Joe as well. So, they're obviously...
Braveheart.
Oh, and Braveheart, beg your pardon.
They're best buddies in Braveheart.
Yeah, so, he obviously has people that he has good friends with and he likes working with, and equally they enjoy working with him. So, I don't know, maybe said to Stephen McCall, do you want to come in, play this part? It's sort of 2 days, 3 days work. I'm sure Steve McCall was like, yeah. And went in there thinking, going to give my absolute best performance in this role for my buddy here.
So, in terms of the journey that John goes on throughout this film, I mean, he just wants recognition from school and his teachers, but he kind of doesn't get it. But he ends up getting it from his friends that he finds in terms of the Neds, effectively, that he kind of groups up with. And he gets that recognition, and he tries to get it through other means in terms of, his friendship with Julian. Mm-hmm. But that kind of obviously falls by the wayside because of Julian's cunt of a mother. And now, to talk about that scene when he throws fireworks wrapped around the football boots through their window, how does John not get done for that? Surely they know who it was that did it. Like, they've seen him do it. How does he not get something done about that?
Maybe they didn't know his second name and they didn't know where he lived. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think the film is in essence a tragedy. Really, we can talk a bit about what the ending might suggest later on, but when he's a wee boy, he's obviously studious, because he wants to do well at school. He's intellectual, he's intelligent. Like we said before, the first scene we see John, he's winning the class prize and everything. He's a bit meek, but even in the early scenes when we see young John, when the teacher that he later bumps heads with, the Latin teacher, when he's handing out the exam results, and John's got 100 out of 100, rather than just say, "Listen, John, very well done," he sort of singles them out, and the praise that he gives them is kind of backhanded. It's not, John's done really well, he's got full marks, he makes them stand on the table, because the rest of the class haven't done very well, and so that sort of kind of victory for John becomes humiliation. So already the incentive to stand out at school for doing well is starting to kind of deteriorate. His sort of high point for his academic studies is right at the beginning of the film when he gets that prize.
But that's the theme throughout the film. Like, instantly, it opens up effectively with you see him getting the prize, and he is kind of celebrating it with his mum and his auntie, and they, for some reason, randomly go off to look at this wedding, and that's when Kanta comes up to him and tells him that when he goes to his school next year, he's going to kick his fucking cunt in every single day. Yeah. And for John, that is obviously torture. He has spent that whole summer worrying about going to school because he knows that Kanta's going to kick his cunt in. But thankfully, John's brother is Benny McGill, who is basically the local hard nut, and he sets his brother and Fergie on Kanta. And that's probably one of my favourite parts of the film. Instantly, the opening of when John goes to bumps into Fergie in the shops, and Fergie delivers a speech about, how do you not know, but it's the speech when he's carving Kanta's name into the wall. And it's got too many S's and too many C's. It's, yeah.
I fucking know how to spell, fuck's sake. There we go, can't I?
From Hardridge.
Get the fuck, that's got fucking S's and L's and fuck knows what in. We'll do my fucking Mo's new kitchen knife in. We'll put down, fuck it, Packer, right? P-A...
Who's Packer?
Packer's not a who, it's a A, that's the fucking team for Hardridge, right? There we go. Is that me done? Can I go back to doing fuck all now?
Instantly, you're kind of like, I really like this guy, Fergie. Yeah. He's a good guy. He's looking after John. Things are going to be okay for John. Yeah. And I'd say when you see Fergie and Benny with Kanta outside his window and they've got the bottles wrapped round his neck. Now, have you ever seen that before? Was that a thing?
I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, I think when it comes to inventive means of hurting each other, I think probably young guys that are in gangs and sort of at war all the time probably have come up with some quite creative ways of inflicting pain and violence on their adversaries. But that's quite a novel one.
So for those who haven't seen the film, effectively they have it's 2 bottles of ginger. It's like 2 big glass iron brew bottles wrapped on string, kind of draped around his neck, and they pull them to the side and then kind of swing them so they loop around his neck and then smack him kind of in the chest or in the face, yeah?
It's basically like swing ball, but rather than being tethered to a pole in your garden, it's tethered to another ball, which is like wrapped around your neck.
And they're like kind of half filled with liquid, so it's going to be heavy, so it's going to hurt. You're going to have like a litre of water smacking you in the chest or face, depending on which way it hits. So it's going to hurt. And he's obviously taken a beating before that. But John kind of like shakes his head as they're looking. Like, do you think they were saying, do you want us to finish him off? Like, as in kill him? But he's like, no.
No, I think... Benny kind of does the old kind of Roman gladiator thumbs up or thumbs down. And I think... I don't think that the suggestion is, should we murder this boy in the back garden? I think it's more, shall we give him a proper fucking doing? Or shall we just let him go? And obviously, he's already had a bit of a tanking already when they drag him in. So no, I don't think the suggestion is shall we do them in. I don't think these guys, even now, I don't think they're necessary. I think it's rare that they're out to kind of kill each other. They're definitely out to hurt each other, like extremely. And but I don't think they ever set out to sort of murder somebody else, apart from in certain cases.
Well, that was the thing. I think the interview you maybe watched, the same as me, with Peter Mullan, and they spoke about the violence in terms of the film. And he said I didn't want to glamorise or do graphically violent scenes because there's so many films do that, and it's over the top. It's like, I wanted to make this real. Like, these kind of fights are short, sharp, and ugly. That's the way it is. And I think this film does a very good job of that. Like, the scenes you have that are violent, and I'm thinking about the bridge scene, for example, which is probably the kind of main fight. You don't see much happen. Yeah. And that's one, I think, amazing thing about this film as well. In terms of the 2 kind of big impactful scenes, you have the fight on the bridge, and it's kind of so placid in terms of you have the girls kind of moving aside to let the woman in the pram go, and then the gangs kind of separate, let the gang go, and then the fight starts. And then you have Cheek to Cheek, which obviously was a Fred Astaire kind of song, but this is a cover by the sensational Alex Harvey Band. And the way this song is used in this film is just sensational in terms of the graphic nature of the violence. But you have this amazing, happy, uplifting song playing, and Cheek to Cheek, the main lyrics kind of, I'm in heaven. And that shows what these guys must be feeling at the time. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The way that's filmed, I think you do see the odd kind of projectile kind of bouncing off somebody, or, like the kids will throw their hands up to their face as though they're just being hit by like a stone or something. But it's the actual fight, from a distance, it just looks like a lot of kind of pushing and shoving. Although they kind of run at each other with like their weapons held up, like their knives or clubs or whatever they're using. But it's the aftermath. So whenever it's all done and the wee boy's he said his throat cut,
and stuff. Even the fight in the boys' toilet as well, near the beginning of the film. He's filmed that in exactly the same way. And to your point, I mean, I've seen a few fights in my life. They've never lasted longer than a few seconds. You know, it's always over very quickly. It's either split up or somebody is hurt. And that, you know, the fight in the boys' toilets, it's not until the boys are being, the teachers have come in and the boys are being lined up against the wall by Gary Lewis to be bollocked. And one of the kids is like, I think I've been stabbed. But you don't see him be stabbed. And when the knife comes sliding under the toilet door, it's not like covered in blood like it should. You know, it's obviously, you know, so like to your point, you know, I think the last thing Peter Mullan would have wanted anybody to do, a little bit like Ken Loach's kind of mission with Sweet 16, the last thing he want anybody to do is young impressionable guys to see this and think, oh, that looks like a laugh, you know, it's like good fun, because I mean it does not. It's fucking horrendous.
Exactly as you've said, the two films I could compare this to are Sweet 16. They don't show the kind of graphic violence in that either. The other film I could compare this to that we've also covered on the Swally would be Small Faces. And they do show a lot more of the graphic violence in that, in terms of the stabbings and the bricks in the face, and you know, when they have the kind of the rammy in the street, you do see a lot more violence in that compared to this, and I think that kind of suffers for it compared to this film, where I think less is more. Yeah, you kind of fear more when you don't see it.
You're right. I mean, with Small Faces it's more of a, I don't want to say glamorous, I think it's almost a more romantic kind of look on it, although there's serious consequences for the characters in Small Faces. Obviously, you know, the older brother Bobby losing his life being the most extreme example of that. It does, because it's a period piece as well, and I suppose it's set, I think Small Faces was set between 1965 and 1969, I think, something like that. So it's not like it's set years and years and years before Neds. You know, if we say, for example, split the difference and say it was set in 1967, you're only talking 6 years before Neds. Yet the fashions are quite different. You know, that kind of mod look is kind of gone. It's Doc Martens, it's rolled up jeans, it's Fred Perry shirts, Crombie jackets, and that sort of thing. It did make me think about Small Faces a lot as well. And I think Small Faces, like I said, it's more romantic. It's a bit more of a, or maybe it's less of a kind of character piece, because we're focusing on three brothers in that.
I don't know. I mean, Lex is kind of the main focus in Small Faces, and you could say it's kind of John, but I would say John is the sole kind of focus. You got Benny, but he's in maybe 3-4 scenes. Yeah. Like, there's not much. John is kind of the sole focus of this film.
He's the catalyst.
Whereas, you're right, Small Faces.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say he's the catalyst for everything happens around them.
I mean, I would say the most graphic act of violence in this film is kind of tinged with a bit of humour in a way, and it's when he's beating his dad with a frying pan. It's funny. It's not meant to be funny, but it is funny. Like, he's just battering his dad with a frying pan, and you're actually cheering him on, because obviously, to talk about his dad, played by Peter Mullan, a wonderful character. The absolute tension whenever he is on the screen. In fact, when he's not on the screen, the first time you see him, you don't even see him. He just comes in, you don't see his face, and it's with his auntie there doing the jigsaw of the Statue of Liberty, and he just comes in to go in the drawer. What is he going in that drawer for? Because he goes in there a couple of times. Opener, I think. Is that a bottle opener? Okay. And you don't see him, but you just feel the tension. And every time you kind of see him, everyone just freezes and they're silent. And I can completely understand that focus in terms of, right, just be quiet. He'll come in, he'll do his thing, he'll go away.
Don't annoy him, you know.
And then when you don't annoy him, don't speak to him. If we don't bother him, he won't bother us, and he'll go away. And then when you see him standing at the bottom of the stairs, goading his wife, it's horrible. But it doesn't need to be conveyed. You already get the impression this is a nightly thing. Yeah. This happens all the time. The way that John and his sister react, that is the genius of Peter Mullan, that he puts that across, that you don't need to hammer it. You immediately know this happens all the time. And it's a wonderful bit of directing, I think. And when it takes to the mother to stand up to him finally, and then the next morning it cuts to John just fucking smashing his head in with a frying pan, you're not surprised.
No, I mean, it's sort of, there's an element of gratification from that scene. I don't know I necessarily agree that it's comedic, but there's definitely an element of gratification because he's a bully. Obviously, the father. It's hinted at early on, and then it's right on the nose with the scene you mentioned of him shouting John's mum down the stairs. So it's a bit like the story from the welder from Falkirk. Seeing a bully get his comeuppance is always kind of gratifying, but it kind of quickly. It's not just a bully getting like a sore face and learning a lesson. To your point, John's out to kill him with a frying pan. He's out to beat his brains in. Ironically, it's the bully's main victim that saves him by stopping it before it can go even further. Watching it and knowing what Peter Mullan said about his own father, it must have been quite difficult for him. I mean, I've never acted not really in my life, but I imagine that to play a character like that, you have to kind of get into a particular frame of mind to give the performance, and I'm sure that he was probably evoking some of his own abusive father's worst qualities. For somebody that you kind of grew up having that relationship with, to then play what may in essence be a version of that person in a film must have been very difficult for him, I think.
Hugely. I guess quite cathartic as well, though, in terms of being able to maybe get it off his chest.
Exercise it.
And and he does get it across very well in terms of the performance. I think he conveys, he's a weak man.
Yeah.
And when he comes to John when he's sober, after John's been huffing glue and has seen Jesus dance to him, to You Won't Find Another Fool Like Me, and he says, go home, your mother's worried. That's when you're seeing the dad sober. And then you kind of think the dad's cleaned up his act, but then when he just turns to John and has the compassion to tell his daughter to cover your ears, as he just says to John, finish me. And you're like, Jesus Christ, like, this guy knows that he is a bad one. But then to put that on your son is, it's just horrific.
The character could just have been the abusive father and sort of started and stopped with it. The scene that you mentioned there about him sending John home, and then the other scene when he asks John to finish him, again, it's actually quite a rich character in a way, because it's clear that this guy is not a happy guy. He's clearly an alcoholic. He can't relate to his, to have sex with his wife. He has to verbally abuse her, and there's a hint of physical abuse there. The way she obeys him and comes down the stairs. He's got no relationship with either of his sons at all. He's got a bit of he seems to have some kind of connection with the daughter, and that he doesn't want her to hear what he says to John and whatnot. And again, it's kind of the genius of Peter Mullan. If he wanted, I don't know how Peter Mullan feels about his father now. I'm not sure what happened to his father, or if they ever sort of reconciled at any point or whatever. But the fact that he's taken the sort of concept of that abusive father, something that he lived with his whole life, and then he doesn't justify the behaviour, but he sort of gives reasons of where that behaviour comes from. You know what I mean? And what is the cause of that behaviour? It's not justified, it's inexcusable, but this is why, and he's clearly deeply, deeply depressed and unhappy.
And you can see that with John. I mean, when he goes full on Baraka from Mortal Kombat 2 and tapes the knives to his arms and goes off topless into the night. But then when he comes back to finish off his dad, he can't do it. And is that because he doesn't want to end up like his dad, or because he genuinely feels sorry for his dad, or I don't know.
It feels like John is, in that scene when he falls on his dad, it feels like he's just fucking exhausted at that point with everything that has led up to that moment. Because, after he's taken the kicking from the rival gang, and his former friends, like he's sort of on the outs with, kind of come to his rescue, and then he sort of turns on them. I think we're sort of reminded of the fact that John he's a clever, intellectual guy with a high IQ, probably, and it feels like he's just sort of had enough of this gang bullshit. He's had enough of the rival gang. He's had enough of the gang that he's in. He's had enough of being at odds with his dad. You know what I mean? And he just sort of fucking collapses down, and he sort of needs. It's like he needs his dad to kind of step up and be a father to him. That's and that he's sort of thrown himself on his dad's mercy almost. And although there's no dialogue in the scene, to me, the way I saw it, he's like, look, I need you now to fucking my mother's not enough. I need you to fucking get me back in the straight and narrow. There's a point in this film that I think they do very well in it, and you remember this from being at high school, but the whole sort of thing about John, he finishes second year, all going well, on the straight and narrow, gets his book token for coming top of the class, which was a thing in the 70s. And then he's got the summer holidays, right? So the summer holidays in Scotland have always been around the 6 week, maybe pushing towards 7 week mark. Now I can remember taking summer holidays and coming back to school, and much like John, kids are very different. I don't remember any kids that came back to school like as different as John goes back to school in terms of his objectives and things, but just like 6 weeks when you're an adult is no time at all, but 6 weeks when you're a kid and you take your summer holidays, a lot of people would come back different, and it might be that they've discovered something over the holiday that they're really into. I think probably the best example is kids coming back to school a bit gothy, so they go off the summer break just in what everyone else is wearing, and then they come back in September and maybe there's like a Nirvana t-shirt or something I suppose now they might come back with a bit of nail varnish and stuff. When I was at school, that wasn't really a thing, but they might come back in like a German army shirt, or a pair of Doc Martens, and I'm into all this stuff now, whereas they went off at the start of the summer, maybe listening to the top 40 and, sort of kind of queuing up for Dario G or something like that, and they come back with a big fucking Korn t-shirt. Hair's a bit longer. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. It was kind of the end of it was like a new beginning. You're like, oh shit, yeah. So okay. This is where people would sort of reinvent themselves. Things have moved on. I always came back after the summer. Maybe feeling a wee bit. There's some, when you go into the next year up, you feel a bit different. You know what I mean? There's more younger kids below you. Each year you're going sort of further up the sort of hierarchy at school in terms of, you might, especially when you get to sixth year or stuff. But it would be kids that they would go off in June, maybe a wee bit plain. A bit sort of just a kid that you see around the school. You don't know them that well, just like a guy who's in your English class or whatever. And then they come back, and suddenly girls are interested in them. Whereas before, they were just another kid in the class. They come back, maybe they've grown a wee bit, maybe they've had their ear pierced, maybe they've kind of straightened out or filled out or something in the 6 weeks. It was the same with girls as well. You'd have girls at school that you didn't really notice that much, just because, you maybe felt that they're a bit plain or whatever. And then they would come back after the summer and everybody would be after them. You know what I mean? They'd be like, and I can never understand how in the space of 6 weeks you can go from a nobody to like a teenage shagger. Yeah, it just happens. That's the thing. But John kind of doesn't have that. I mean, in terms of his journey, he just has a bit of a meltdown, but then kind of rectifies himself in the end towards then. I mean, obviously he goes through quite a journey in terms of what he does, and then he has his little Robinson Crusoe moment when he's living in the boiler room at the flats, stealing bread and milk and scud mags from the neighbours. I mean, where did he get those scud mags from? Do you think people got them delivered door to door, or were they just lying about the boiler room? I think was probably solved the mystery of why the Janny started locking the door. He's coming in and finding the pages and his jazz mags all stuck together and stuff like that, I think, to talk about the ending. So what I take from the ending, so the end is he's been put into the remedial class. They've agreed to take him back to school. He has suggested that he's turned over a new leaf for reasons, and I'm sure that's probably highly likely that this would happen despite his previous clear intelligence. He's put into the remedial class with the special needs kids, and wee T, who is just sort of who's at the wrong school. just wandered into the wrong classroom, which just made me which always makes me laugh. And they're taken out on a school trip to, I guess it's supposed to be the old Glasgow Zoo, which is now shut down. And the van breaks down, and John's left with Kanta, who previously in the film, he's dropped a slab on the boy's head after knocking him out, essentially. Kanta's brain damaged, and he's in the remedial class because of his brain damage. And John sort of leads him through the lions to what I can only assume is safety. So I was thinking, does that suggest the fact that John has successfully negotiated the literal lions at the safari park or at the zoo? Does that mean that it's going to be all right for him? It's a sort of metaphor for the fact that the whole movie is he's been with the lions, if you like, for the movie when he's gone with the gangs and the fighting and the violence and the huffing glue out of a Golden Wonder crisps bag and stabbing Jesus. Is that like a little metaphor for the fact that maybe John's going to be all right in the future?
I took it as he has caused Kanta's head injury and trauma. As you say, he's kind of punched him out and then chuck a paving slab on his head to give him massive brain damage and lead to him being having learning difficulties. I think it speaks a lot that it's the two of them that are left on the bus in the end. And Kanta is trying to grab John's hand and hold his hand, and John is being kind of the fuck off, like swatting him away. And then in the end, he gives in and holds his hand, and they walk off into the distance. And they literally walk into the lion's den. And you have, 6, 7 lions there. And it's just such a calm, serene ending. And I almost think it's in a way of John kind of being like, right, if we survive this, we get a second chance. Kanta's got nothing to live for because he's a vegetable. I'm kind of fucked as well. So let's try this as a test. If we get through this and the lions think we're okay, we're all right. And the lions don't see them as any threat. And take that as you will, because obviously Kanta's no threat to anyone because he's obviously severely brain damaged, and it's almost like John's passed the test because it's like, okay, you're no threat. You're a good guy. You're a good guy. The lions are thinking you're okay. And, one of the female lions comes, behind him and follows him a little bit and then stops at the side, and it's like, okay, he's no threat. And I like to think that they kind of walk off together. They go and find safety, and everything's going to be okay. They kind of find solace, but I like to think John does something with his life after this. Kind of, it's a new beginning, so to speak. And I think he realises that he's no threat. He's a good guy, and go on and do something.
Did you see the blistering cameo from Take the High Road's own Gary Hollywood as a uniformed police officer?
Did. Yes, that was a wonderful little piece. I did notice that, yes.
Chewing the scenery. Okay, shall we put Neds through our Swally Awards?
Yeah, why not? Let's put it through the awards. Okay, what have we got first?
My first award is the Ewan McGregor Award for Gratuitous Nudity. So the only one that I had really, and I put a question mark beside it, was Jesus. It's not really gratuitous, but everyone else keeps their clothes on.
I had the Scud book that John is reading in the boiler room, because you do see some tits and a fanny in that. Obviously, I paid a lot closer attention to the Scud book that he was reading. It was a copy of Mayfair, but you do see some bush and some boobies in that Scud book. But yeah, Jesus would count as well, but does Jesus beat a bush? I don't know, Crown of Thorns. Does Jesus beat a bush?
Does he beat a burning bush? Okay, the James Cosmo Award for being an everything Scottish. There's a couple of options here, I would say.
Yeah, I've got 3 options here. What did you go for?
Initially, I had put Cullen, but when I came back to it, I thought, well, you got Gary Lewis in there, who is just phenomenal. I mean, forget how good at comedy Gary Lewis is. I mean, even when he plays Thomas in Orphans, although Thomas is ultimately quite a tragic character, there's still some really, really funny moments from Gary Lewis. And that scene when John turns up late and, my word, sir, you look tired. It's just absolutely hilarious.
You look exhausted, sir. So tired. But Perhaps I could help you. Stand up here. I said, son. I'll give you a cold carry. Come on. What class are you in?
3A.
I'll get you there. On you get. Hup. Hup. My goodness. You're heavy, young sir.
Can I ask, so Gary Lewis in that scene, and then obviously you have him again in the scene in the toilet where the guy's been stabbed, yeah? So Gary Lewis is the headmaster of that school because he has the cloak on and stuff, yeah? Surely.
That is the suggestion because, but then maybe he's the new headmaster because John goes to see the headmaster when he first starts the school and he thinks he's in the wrong class. I love that scene, the headmaster comes out of the toilet with a fag hanging out his mouth and washes his hands. So he's been for a piss with a fag in his mouth. He comes out of the toilet, washes his hands with a fag still in his mouth.
Is that the same headmaster as at the end as well?
Well, we don't see him, do we?
No, but when his auntie and mum go to see the headmaster to get John back into school, and the headmaster walks him to the remedial class.
That's right.
And he walks him past one of them. Is that the same headmaster as the start? Because it's not Gary Lewis.
It's not Gary Lewis. I think it might be. So maybe Gary Lewis is like the deputy head or something.
Okay. I'd need to go back and check if it's the same headmaster from the start to the end. Because one of my notes was, why is Gary Lewis no longer the headmaster? But maybe it is the same as the very first one that, as you say, is still smoking a fag and washing his hands. But I need to check that.
So Gary Lewis. But then Dave Mackay he's in quite a lot of Scottish stuff. And then, recent possible Swally fan, Stephen McCall, who's liked more than one of he liked our Dog Soldiers post on Thursday as well, advertising the Dog Soldiers podcast.
I had Gary Lewis was my main award winner for the Cosmo Award, but I did have Stephen McCall in brackets because Stephen McCall has been in a lot of Scottish things, and to be fair, this performance will put him number 2 clear out in the Swally tally. He is, it's him and Alex Norton competing for the top spot. And Stephen McCall is just in so many Scottish things, and I've never seen him deliver a bad performance. Everything he's in, he's so good. Like even this, he's in 3 scenes, and genuinely, like I say, I compare him to Mark Wahlberg in The Departed. He steals the scenes in the show, and he's so good. However, in terms of being in everything Scottish, when you look at their IMDb list and you look at all of the Scottish things, it's Gary Lewis.
I mean, if Stephen is a recent fan of Culture Swally, and if you're listening, Stephen, maybe you could tell us why you decided to go sort of gingerish for this role. So I'm pretty sure that's not his natural colour. Just interested to know on what drove the choice. That's all. Not a big deal.
Okay.
The Jake McQuillan Your T-Zoot Award. So for this one, I didn't want, initially I thought I was going to go for John punching Cantor. And if it had just finished with John punching Cantor, then maybe I would have done that. But because of what happens next. So instead, I went with Benny punching the rival gang leader after inviting him to a square go, telling him to put down his tool. And as he goes to put it down, Benny absolutely thumps him before giving him a couple of kicks and sort of stepping back. So that seemed to sit nicely in the Jake McQuillan vein of random acts of violence.
You know something, I did put John smacking Cantor and then smacking a paving stone on his head. But the way you have spoken so eloquently about Benny smacking the rival gang guy, I'm going to give it to that. Yeah, that is, you're right, that is a very much a kind of Jake McQuillan award. That is, definitely.
It might be the most Jake McQuillan-y example of the Jake McQuillan award we've had since just a boys' game. Now,
Jake McQuillan would be proud of that.
He would. Now, for the Francis Begbie Award for swearing, the whole film, the swearing is quite gratuitous. So I've just selected two of my favourites. My first one is Fergie. Can I go back to doing fuck all now? I like that. And Wee T at the end of the film to the park ranger, "Will no touch your fucking lions," I think might be the funniest line in the whole film.
What do you think you're doing? Get back in the van, there's lions round here. Calm down. Don't go fucking touch our lions.
I gave it to Fergie's whole speech when he's carving the canta, and he's like, it's got fucking S's and C's in it. The whole speech for me is just littered with swearing, and it's just hilarious.
His regard for his mum's new kitchen knife is quite heartwarming, isn't it? There's another line in the film which has no swearing in it, which did make me laugh. Your ma's had mair bell ends than weekends. You know, I know that like some guys when I was at school, the art of slagging off a friend or enemy's mother, some guys got it down to a fine art. I'm not sure anybody topped that one. Well, not that I condone slagging off your friend. It was a different time. Archetypal Scottish moment.
I gave it to one of two. It was either David Mackay's speech when he's speaking to them, going around the group, and he does say to the two guys that don't have any illnesses, "Oh, well, keep eating your porridge. The human race depends on you."
Yeah.
I mean, porridge is obviously such a Scottish thing. Either that, or I think I might give it to Wee T and his grandmother hiding his shoes in the biscuit cupboard, and he's still picking caramel logs out of his sock.
I had they're both brilliant. I had the Provi check, but I think the Provi check might be maybe particular to Glasgow. I don't know, like, did kids get Provi checks in Aberdeen?
Yeah, my uncles used to get Provi checks in Aberdeen, so that was the third one on my list, was the Provi check. But I wasn't sure if it was an Aberdeen thing. So I wasn't sure whether to put that as a Scottish moment, but maybe that could win. I
like John. Obviously, when his brief friendship with the kind of more upper middle class kid Julian, when he's having to describe to Julian what a Provi check is. He says, "Oh, my ma says if I get a paper round, I can get a Provi check, and I can pay it back at £1 a week." And he says, "So you can get up to £100. I'm going to get 25 fucking pounds, man." Yeah, I like that one. The Sean Connery Award for who won the movie. I think it's an open and shut case, really. But yeah,
why?
I mean,
who are you going with?
I mean, I have to give it to Conor McCarron. You know, we talked about him at the beginning. The fact he's very little acting experience and is essentially carrying the whole film. You know, he's got a lot of scenes with Peter Mullan. I don't think he doesn't have any scenes with Stephen McCall. He has 2 scenes with Gary Lewis and a number of scenes with Peter Mullan, plus the other less well-known adult actors that were in the film. And he, more than holds his own. And it reminds me a little bit of he even looks a wee bit like Ray Winston in Scum, like a young Ray Winston, the sort of red hair, the stocky build and stuff. There's a resemblance.
You're right. Yeah.
So that
was he does actually. Now you mention it, yeah. Yeah, I had Conor McCarron. That my alternate was Peter Mullan. Purely because obviously he directed the film, and although he's not in it a lot, his performance is incredible in terms of Dad. He is someone you just want to absolutely despise and hate, but then all of a sudden in a flip you feel really sorry for him and kind of feel empathetic. And he's probably got maybe 6-7 lines in the whole film. Most of them are fat bitch, fat slag.
Yeah, slack Alice. Yeah.
To deliver that kind of performance and to deliver so little lines, but yet to have a character you kind of hate so much but then feel so sorry for, it's incredible. I would say we'd give it to Conor McCarron because he does deliver an incredible performance in this film. And I mean, without him, he's literally, once you get past the next stage, he's in every scene. And I think that's what Peter Mullan said in the interview we watched, that it was so important to cast the right actor because he's literally in every single scene.
Yeah, really good. Brilliant. No, I enjoyed going back to Neds.
Yeah.
So, is your turn to choose content for next time?
I'm kind of cheating a little bit this week. Not really, but kind of. I'm kind of inspired by one of our listeners who is everyone's favourite Canadian baker, Strong Henry. So I know we had spoken to him. I think you'd spoken to him, Greg, on Instagram. And he'd mentioned that he was a big fan of Ian Banks. And I think we possibly think he's maybe a fan of Ian Banks's kind of sci-fi kind of work, maybe more than his literary work. And there's literally only 3 pieces of Ian Banks's work that have been made into films or TV shows. And we've already covered one, which was Complicity. And I was very, very sick this last week, as we've discussed earlier. So whilst I was in bed sick, I actually reread one of Ian Banks's books that I haven't read since I was 14. And I haven't seen this adaptation of it since it came out. So next time with the Swally, I would like to look at the 1996 adaptation of The Crow Road.
Excellent. 5 episodes or 4?
4 episodes.
4. It's been a while since we've done a TV show, so yeah.
It has been. I was going to pick a TV show otherwise, but yeah, I thought, you know what, let's do The Crow Road, probably because I read it last week. Yeah. And it's fresh in my mind. But I have you ever read the book?
Yes, I read the book.
We'll cover that next time.
yeah, I've read it. Okay, brilliant.
Okay. Right, everyone, thank you so much for listening. And if you would like to get in touch with us, and if you've seen anything in the news you'd like us to review, or if you have anything you would like us to actually review on the podcast, then you can email us on cultureswally@gmail.com. Or why don't you follow us on Instagram at cultureswallypod, or you can follow us on Twitter at swallypod. And hey, why don't you leave us a nice little review, rate and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, because it really does help the podcast grow. And Greg, we have a website, don't we?
We have a website. Yep, you can find us at cultureswallyblog.com. There's links to all the episodes and links to some of our favourite news stories that we've covered in the last, how many months now? 16 months? 17 months? I'm not sure. When did we start? May 2020? So
no, not to let light in upon magic, but we started recording in May, but we started releasing episodes in the 1st of September.
Okay. But anyway, you can find links to some of our favourite stories there, plus the updated Swally tally and various other bits and bobs. You can also contact us through the website.
Fantastic. Okay, right.
All right then, until next time.
Till next time, Greg.